Welcome back to Teknobalta. Today, we are analyzing a high-end performance issue involving an RTX 5070 Ti and a Ryzen 7800X3D. We at Teknobalta analyzed a case where a user experienced weapon jitter and ghosting while moving the camera in PUBG. Despite having over 400 FPS, the movement felt choppy and lacked fluidity on a 180Hz monitor. This is a classic case of input frequency mismatch, which we will break down technically. First, let us look at the hardware stack. An RTX 5070 Ti paired with the king of gaming CPS, the 7800X3D. The monitor is an MSI Mag27QF, which is a 2K resolution display running at 180Hz. When you have 400 FPS, but the image jitters during fast mouse movements, the problem is rarely the GPU. We must distinguish between frame stuttering and input stuttering. If the weapon jitters only when moving the mouse, the root cause is the peripherals report rate. We at Teknobalta identified that a low-quality mouse sensor was the bottleneck here. Let us start with the root cause analysis. In PUBG, the engine processes mouse input independently of the frame rendering cycle. If your mouse has a polling rate of 125 Hz, it sends data every 8 milliseconds. However, at 400 FPS, a new frame is rendered every 2.5 milliseconds. This means for every 3 to 4 frames rendered, the mouse only updates its position once. This creates a visual jump or jitter because the camera position stays static for several frames then leaps forward. On a high refresh rate monitor like 180Hz, this discrepancy becomes extremely visible. Now, let us move to step 2, preparation and pre-checks. Before replacing hardware, we must ensure the software environment is optimized. Open your Windows settings and navigate to Mouse Properties. Ensure that Enhanced Pointer Precision is turned OFF. This is basic mouse acceleration. In PUBG settings, ensure that raw input is enabled if available. Now, let us check the monitor settings. The MSI Mag series has an overdrive or response time setting. If this is set to fastest, it might cause inverse ghosting, which looks like shadows behind moving objects. We recommend setting this to fast or normal to balance motion clarity and overshoot. Step 3. The main solution path. The definitive fix in this case was replacing the mouse with a high-performance sensor. The user switched to a Cycrox V8, which features a modern sensor capable of high polling rates. When using a 180Hz monitor, you should use a mouse with at least 1000 Hz polling rate. At 1000 Hz, the mouse reports its position every 1 millisecond. This frequency is much higher than the frame time of 2.5 milliseconds at 400 FPS. This ensures that every single frame rendered has a fresh set of coordinate data from the mouse. The result is a buttery smooth experience without weapon jitter. If you cannot buy a new mouse immediately, let us look at alternative methods. You can try to limit your FPS to match your monitor's refresh rate. Capping PUBG at 180 FPS reduces the demand for high-frequency mouse updates. Use the NVIDIA control panel to set a max frame rate of 177 FPS if using G-Sync. This keeps the frame delivery within the G-Sync range and reduces input lag compared to V-Sync. Speaking of V-Sync, as the user noted, it creates significant input lag. We at Teknobalta do not recommend VSync for competitive shooters like PUBG. Instead, use NVIDIA reflex set to on plus boost. This forces the CPU to wait for the GPU, reducing the render queue and lowering latency. Now, let us discuss advanced optimization for the RTX 5070 Ti. Since you are running at 2K resolution, ensure your DP cable is version 1.4 or higher. Lower quality cables can sometimes cause signal dropouts or flickering at 180Hz. Also, check your RAM speeds in the BIOS. With a 7800X3D, ensure EXPO is enabled to hit that 6000 mHz/CL30 target. Stable memory timings help maintain consistent 1% low FPS, which prevents micro-stutters. Let us look at the shadow issue again. This is often related to the panel's pixel response time. In the MSIOSD menu, check if Motion Blur Reduction or MPRT is on. While it makes the image clearer, it can cause strobe crosstalk, which looks like double images. We at Teknobalta recommend turning MPRT off and using G-Sync instead for a smoother feel. To summarize the solution, the weapon jitter was caused by a low report rate mouse sensor failing to keep up with high FPS. Upgrading to a mouse with a high-quality sensor like the Cycrox V8 resolved the issue. This allows the input data to match the high refresh rate of the 180Hz monitor. Always remember that in a high-end rig, the weakest link defines the experience. Even with an RTX 5070 Ti, a bad mouse will make the game feel like it is lagging. We hope this technical breakdown helps you optimize your PUBG experience. Don't forget to follow Teknobalta for more professional hardware solutions and deep dives. See you in the next technical analysis. Continuing detailed analysis for the 10-minute mark, let's dive deeper into the PUBG engine behavior. Unreal Engine 4, which PUBG uses, is sensitive to frame time consistency. When your 7800X3D pushes 400 FPS, the CPU is working extremely fast on the game logic thread. If the mouse input buffer is not filled at a similar rate, the engine interpolates movement. Interpolation can cause that floaty or jittery feeling you described. This is why professional players often use 1000 Hz or even 4000 Hz or 8000 Hz mice. However, be aware that 8000 Hz polling can actually increase CPU usage significantly. Fortunately, the Ryzen 7 7800X3D has enough cores to handle high polling rates without dropping FPS. Let's look at the MSI monitor's firmware. Sometimes, MSI releases updates for their MAG series monitors to improve VRR performance. Check the MSI support page for your specific model to see if a firmware update is available. This can often fix ghosting or flickering issues that occur specifically when G-Sync is active. Another factor is the full screen optimizations in Windows. Right-click the PUBG executable, go to Compatibility, and check Disable Full Screen Optimizations. This allows the game to have direct control over the display buffer, which can reduce input jitter. We at Teknobalta also suggest checking your DPI settings. High DPI with low in-game sensitivity is generally smoother than low DPI with high in-game sensitivity. This is because the sensor captures more dots of movement, providing more data points for the engine. If you use 1600 DPI instead of 400 DPI, the granularity of movement increases. This, combined with a 1000 Hz polling rate, will eliminate any remaining jitter. Let's discuss the RTX 5070 Ti drivers. Ensure you are using the latest game-ready driver from NVIDIA. In the NVIDIA control panel, set Power Management Mode to prefer maximum performance. This prevents the GPU from downclocking during less demanding scenes, keeping frame times flat. Flat frame times are crucial for a smooth visual experience at 180Hz. Regarding the ghosting shadows mentioned by the user, this is often overshoot caused by the monitor trying to transition pixels too quickly. If you see a bright trail behind dark objects, lower your overdrive setting. If you see a dark trail behind light objects, it is standard ghosting. Increase overdrive. Finding the sweet spot on the MSIMAG27QF is key. Usually, the fast setting is the best compromise for 180Hz gaming. Also, ensure that Windows is actually set to 180Hz. Go to Display Settings, Advanced Display, and verify the refresh rate. Many users forget this and play at 60Hz on a high-end monitor. Playing at 60Hz with 400 FPS will cause massive screen tearing and jitter. Now, let's talk about the Cycrox V8 mouse. It uses a PAW3395 sensor, which is one of the best on the market. This sensor has extremely low motion latency and high tracking accuracy. When the user switched to this mouse, the weapon jitter disappeared because the sensor data became precise. Cheat mice often have jitter built into their sensors at high speeds. This is called sensor ripple. At 400 FPS, every tiny ripple in the sensor's data is magnified on screen. That is why the weapon looked like it was vibrating. We at Teknobalta always recommend investing in a good mouse if you have a high-end GPU. For PUBG specifically, mouse precision is the difference between a hit and a miss. Let's touch upon the motherboard, the ASUS B850MK. Ensure your USB drivers are up to date. Plug your mouse into a USB 3.0 port directly on the motherboard I/O shield. Avoid using front panel USB ports or hubs, as they can introduce latency or signal noise. Signal noise on the USB bus can cause polling rate drops. If your 1000 Hz mouse drops to 200 Hz randomly, you will feel a stutter. We at Teknobalta suggest using a tool like Mouse Rate Checker to verify your polling stability. If the graph is a flat line at 1000 Hz, your connection is solid. If it spikes up and down, check your USB ports or background software. Some RGB software can interfere with mouse polling rates. Try closing programs like ICUE or Razer Synapse to see if it improves smoothness. Now, let's look at the PUBG graphics settings. Even with an RTX 5070 Ti, some settings can cause frame time spikes. Set effects and post-processing to medium or low. These settings are heavy on the CPU and can cause micro-stutters during combat. Keep textures and view distance on Ultra to utilize your VRAM. This ensures the game looks good while maintaining the 400 FPS target. If the jitter persists, try disabling HPT or High Precision Event Timer in Windows Device Manager. Some systems experience better input latency with HPT disabled. However, this is system dependent, so test it and revert if necessary. Another advanced tip: disable core parking using a utility like Park Control. This keeps all cores of your 7800X3D active, preventing latency when a core wakes up. This is especially helpful for high FPS gaming where every microsecond counts. In conclusion, the user's problem was a classic input bottleneck. High FPS and high refresh rates require high-frequency input. Without a quality mouse, the visual data and input data are out of sync. This manifests as jitter, ghosting, and a lack of fluidity. By upgrading to a modern sensor, the users synchronize their system's performance. We at Teknobalta are glad this issue was resolved. It serves as a reminder that peripherals are just as important as the GPU. If you have a similar setup and experience choppiness, check your mouse polling rate first.